Alrighty. Hey everybody, how is everybody this beautiful Sunday? Great to see familiar and new faces here in the chat. So it's just going to be us here today. We'll keep it very simple. As usual, I'll go through the chat here and greet everybody who has joined us and answer some of your questions and anything that you feel like you want to talk about today, any perspectives you want to share, or of course any questions you have, maybe about astrology or true sidereal in general, be sure to mention that in the chat. That can keep things moving for us and hopefully provide some value for everyone joining us today. And as always, let me know how the audio is. Hopefully the music isn't too loud or too low. So if you can hear me and maybe just that music very slightly in the distance, that would be the best. But please let me know down in the chat. All right, so Notions and Potions. Great for you to join us. I believe that's a new name. I can't say that I remember that name before. So if you are new, thanks so much for joining. We do meet every week here to discuss astrology, true sidereal specifically, which is the actual sky astrology, using the actual size of the constellations. But great for you to join us. Thank you, Notions and Potions. Holly, always a pleasure. Great for you to join us. Great to see you here. Holly says, hello, Athen and fellow visible sky friends. I like that. That has a very nice ring to it. Visible sky friends. Very simple and, and I think a great way of explaining the community and what we're about all in one phrase. Highway Runner, great for you to join us. I think you're also new here as well, I believe. But either way, thank you so much. Erica Alexandria Thompson, great to see you as always. Erica says, happy to be among you cosmic friends, pausing from drawing and learning digital art and continuing my esoteric studies. We'll be taking a mini vacation shortly to refresh and reconnect with colleagues. That's great to hear. I would say definitely a great time of the year for a bit of reconnection, probably also a vacation, especially if it's refreshing like that. It does sound very peaceful, but thank you so much, Erica, for sharing, and hope you have a great little vacation there if we don't see you before then, but always great to have you on. Bobby, great for you to join us as well. Also a new face, I believe. Greetings from New York City, Athen and company. Thank you so much, Bobby. Thanks for joining. Karmic Kerfuffle, always a pleasure. Karmic says, hello. I hope everyone is having a sunny Sunday. A question for Athen. Which house system do you use and why? Thanks. Very good question. And I think a very important one, especially when we're dealing with true sidereal, because with true sidereal, we're using a different zodiac system. And this is only concerning the signs. Right, so when we hear about the difference between tropical and sidereal, or the difference between sidereal and true sidereal, we're really only talking about the different signs, where the signs are, basically. But that's what we call the zodiac system, and so the only thing true sidereal changes is the zodiac system. But there is, of course, also the house system, which is the system or techniques that you use to cast the houses in the chart. And in the chart, these are numbered 1 through 12, whereas the signs are, of course, Aries through Pisces. So the signs are on the outer part of the chart, the houses are on the inner part, and the houses are numeric, 1 through 12. But there are different ways of dividing the houses. So basically what the houses are is it's basically dividing up the sky into certain parts, okay? And that's why the first house is always on the left, which represents the eastern horizon. So this line here, what we call the ascendant or the rising, of course, the sign would be that sign, but this part of the chart, this beginning of the first house, is the eastern horizon. Then, of course, opposite that is the western horizon, which is the beginning of the seventh house. And everything on the top of the chart is the visible sky at that time of birth or at that time and location, and then below that is everything under the earth. So with the houses, we're concerned with, okay, well, how do we want to divide up the sky? Now the system I use is the equal house system. Now again, you can use any house system with any zodiac system. So you can use equal with tropical, you can use equal house with any sidereal system. So again, zodiac system, house system, completely independent, completely separate from one another, and you can use any combination. So I use equal, and the reason is because it doesn't change the sky. So what we have with equal is that we're just saying, okay, the sky is exactly how we see it, and we're just going to divide up these houses, these 12 parts, into 12 equal divisions, so that the highest part of the chart, which is the 10th house, which is this thick line here that starts the 10th house, that's the highest part of the ecliptic. So that's the highest part of the path of the planets or the path of the sun more specifically. And so this keeps everything very organized and very simple and very clean and very clear in the sense of this is exactly how we see the sky. So with equal, we're not changing the sky. We're not skewing it in any way. The most common type of house system, at least in the West, is a quadrant house system. Now, quadrant house system divides up the sky or the houses by north, east, south, and west. The four angles, the four directions. And so what we see here, which is the midheaven in the chart, this represents true south if you're in the northern hemisphere, or true north if you're in the southern hemisphere. And that's because, again, we're always looking at the path of the sun with the zodiac. And so if you're standing in the northern hemisphere, you're looking south to see that. And if you're in the southern hemisphere, you're looking north to see that. So the midheaven is the true south or true north point. What the quadrant systems will do, and those in the West, a lot of you have maybe heard of Placidus. That's the most common quadrant system. But these will divide the houses by northeast, south, and west. So I want you to look here what that does to the chart, because as you can see, equal has not changed anything. In the visible sky, we have, as you can see, these blue lines, if you can see them. There's these blue lines running across the sky. These are those houses. And as you can see, the highest part of the sky, or the highest part of the ecliptic, is this 10th house blue line, this middle blue line. But what we're going to do is we're going to use a quadrant system now. So I'm going to go ahead and apply a different profile. Actually, this is going to keep it equal. So I need to go in and actually manually change it. So I'm going to change the house system here from equal to the most common in the West, Placidus. And now I want you to look and I want you to notice how all the houses will change sizes now, and that this 10th house, the beginning of the 10th house, will actually be over here with the midheaven. So you see it's shrunk all these houses and it's expanded all these houses in order to make it so that true south, in this case, is the beginning of the 10th house, is the beginning of the third quadrant of the chart. Excuse me, the fourth quadrant of the chart. So as you'll see here, if it does update, I think, or no, it won't update on the visible sky. But of course, if we were looking at the sky right now, this 10th house would be skewed to the right. It wouldn't be the highest part of the ecliptic any longer. So as you can see, this stretches and shrinks the houses to match up with northeast, south, and west, more specifically with the south and north points. And this can actually be very extreme once we get to very extreme latitudes. So if you go up to, Scandinavia or really far south, this will really, this midheaven can be as far into what would have been the equal house of the 7th house. It can really be that far. Usually somewhere between the 8th and the 11th. But the more that midheaven moves, the more these houses will expand and shrink. So, this is thought to be accurate because you're using northeast, south, and west, but this is not how we see it visibly. When you look at the sky, you don't see visibly where true south is or where true north is. So this is why I use equal house with true sidereal, because with true sidereal, we're most concerned with using the visible sky as we see it. In the East, they'll use what's called whole sign, which is where they'll take the signs to be houses. So for example, in this particular chart, because the ascendant is in Gemini, they'll say everything in Gemini is the first house, then everything in Cancer is the second house, everything in Leo is the third house. And so as you can see, that would also change the areas of the sky, because now you're again shrinking and expanding the areas of the sky. So that's why we use equal. So there's a bunch of different house systems. Equal is still very common in the West. The most common in the East with Hindu astrology is whole sign, but this is a completely different chart. It's usually a Vedic chart, very different from the circular chart. And the most common in the West, though, is some sort of quadrant system, usually Placidus. But hopefully that was a detailed answer to your question, Karmic, to really explain why, we're using equal house. And also that, you can use any other house system with true sidereal. And I still find all the house systems to be accurate. So if you, for example, find Placidus to be very accurate, use Placidus. You can still use that, with true sidereal. Yeah, so the houses are the inner circle, 1 through 12. It's these lines here, dividing up those 12. All right, so Leon, not sure how to say your name, but thanks so much for joining. You're new here, so Leon says, hi, I'm new here. A friend sent me. Look forward to it. Well, thanks so much for joining. I'm happy that your friend sent you this, and hopefully you do find this true sidereal system helpful. Of course, there's always the chart calculator. Gabriella, if you could send a link in the chat here for the chart calculator, so anyone who wants to type in their birth details and see their actual chart, their actual sky, they can do so, especially for those that are new. And we now have a visible sky on the chart calculator, so you can actually see the visible sky, literally, planetarium with your chart as well, which I think is really cool. All right, so Highway Runner says, experiencing a somber sadness. Yeah, I've been feeling it too. It started to hit me maybe about 5 or so days ago. Melancholy. I mean, this is the Pisces thing, right? So if there's any sign that rules somberness, melancholy, even, deep things like depression, it's Pisces. And because what Pisces wants us to do is really connect to our soul. And of course, the conscious self is only a very small fragment of the self. And it's much like that iceberg analogy where you see just the tip of the iceberg is the conscious mind, but the vast amount of an iceberg is actually submerged under the ocean, which is, I think, a very good analogy for the unconscious mind being the largest and even dominant part of the self, playing the most role. So what Pisces wants us to do is connect to that. Pisces wants us to connect to that unseen part of the self, that under the water part of the iceberg of the self, if you will. And so things come up, and a lot of times they're not even our own. Pisces is the fish swimming in water, connected by a string. But as you can see here, where they're connected to a single point. And this is very symbolic that we're all connected to this singular point. The source, if you will, God, if you will, consciousness, if you will, whatever the philosophy is, isn't so important with Pisces as much as it's that we are all connected. And so when we're dealing with a lot of Pisces energy, we're dealing with a lot of the collective unconscious as well. And so they can just be collectively feelings that we're picking up. We become highly intuitive, highly sensitive, both to our own and outer feelings and energies in general. So anyways, I've been feeling it too. Let me know if anyone else has. It is, in my opinion, from the Pisces energy astrologically. We just had that solar eclipse in Pisces. We still have the fast movers retrograde here in Pisces. Mercury and Venus are still retrograde. So speaking of, they are going to go direct this week. So Mercury is going direct tomorrow, which is great. So we're going to start to notice a little bit more forward movement, I think. Mercury being the sort of mind and the day-to-day life and communications as well. Starting to move forward. Do give tomorrow a bit of a pause though. So it's good to pause with the energy a little bit, especially in Pisces like this. But it's going to be really about starting to implement this newfound connection, or reintegrate the soul, or reintegrate the spiritual self, that we're talking about here with with Pisces. And Venus is going to go direct at the end of the week on Saturday, and that's going to be with a full moon as well. So Saturday is going to be the halfway point of the lunar cycle. That's likely where we're going to get some new perspective on our life. It's going to be in Virgo again, if you will. The last, what it was, a lunar eclipse, the last full moon was right in between Leo and Virgo. So it's really been multiple months now of this axis of personal development. And so whereas Pisces is the more mental health and spiritual health stuff that we're talking about, the full moon in Virgo is going to be, really about grounding that, right? Virgo is about the physical health. And so we're going to get an illumination of this where we can further develop the physical health. Maybe things like our routines, our habits, maybe work and service, but getting into that improvement-oriented, creating structure, right? Is really what it's going to be about. And that awareness is going to help us balance out this Pisces energy. So it's not just water, it's also earth. It's not just the unconscious, it's also the physical world. And that's going to help us really strike a balance between this very etheric energy of Pisces in the physical world. So that's going to be, Saturday. It's going to be opposite Chiron. The sun's going to go over Chiron. It's a very close opposition with the full moon to Chiron. Chiron is the healer. So we're very likely to get some healing energy coming in that we're very aware of, integrating. We could feel very healed and rejuvenated going into the following week. And it is going to be forming a T-square with Mars. So this is the challenging side to it. Now, squares are not just like this thing happening to us. It's not just this, like challenges and suffering. It's that we want to challenge ourselves, and the squares are really the most constructive times of the cycles, of any cycle. In this case, we could say with the Sun-Mars cycle. And so here it's all about integrating the fire constructively. So there's likely to be an over or under extreme of the fire with this full moon, even though it's in the watery world of Pisces. And so we might find that over or under extreme with, assertiveness, proactivity, etc. But finding the constructive way of doing that. So healthy proactivity, healthy assertiveness. And this is, I think, going to be a very beautiful step in the right direction involving that fiery side of Mars. Again, probably feeling a bit rejuvenated with Chiron there in the mix. And the full moon will be trining up to Jupiter, which is nice to see, giving us some support from that expansive Jupiter, which is really about perhaps seeing things from a different perspective. Maybe a bit of open-mindedness, different beliefs, and maybe even opportunities as well as a result of those new perspectives that the trines can give us there. So an important full moon because, it's the halfway point of this solar eclipse month. What started this whole lunar cycle about a little over a week ago from today was a solar eclipse. And that was in, again, Pisces, this watery energy. And so now we're coming up to the heightened energy of the month on Saturday, where we get that awareness, where we make some shifts and changes usually, and we have some of that energy to help us do it. And it's probably going to be in those ways. Again, Venus going direct at that time too helps that energy move forward. So whatever's been reflected on really the past month and a half in regards to reflecting maybe on our values, reflecting or reconnecting in our relationships, these are things that are likely to, again, pause on Saturday and then slowly start to move forward into next week. So, Srai, great day, all. I would love to hear about the energy of Mars in Cancer currently and how that will play out. Well, that's a great time to ask the question. So let's go back to Mars. Let's get a little more detail on Mars. So Mars has just now re-entered Cancer after his recent retrograde, which was very late last year. So this basically December, January into February of this year. And where he started that in December was in Cancer. And so we're now going back over that. So first of all, with Mars in Cancer, again, we know Mars is that fiery side of ourself. We could say it's the masculine part of all of ourselves. It's how we assert, it's how we're proactive, how we take initiative, how we go about fulfilling our needs and expressing ourselves and our needs. So Cancer is actually a very different energy to this. This is why Mars is considered debilitated or very challenged in Cancer. Because Cancer is more about, it's about caring and nurturing, okay, fundamentally. And so if Mars is about going after what we want, you can see that it's very different from caring, nurturing, emotional connectivity, things of this nature. So it is a difficult transit in that our masculine side or our fiery side is maybe a bit difficult to express at the moment from that perspective. But it is a great time to integrate this caring energy into that. What I would say is it's very much like the protector. Mars in Cancer is like the protector, right? The warrior that is strong and assertive and direct, but at the same time caring and nurturing and protecting for those things and people that are important to us personally, for our own security and for the security of others. And so this is how I'd say is a really good way of working with this. We're still working with that shadow period of Mars for the coming weeks. So still good to be, still a bit flexible with this. But now it's really about moving this forward, especially if you can think back to basically December. If there was anything that you were maybe starting to reconnect to this side of yourself, or maybe some themes around these types of things started to come up that now can be implemented and now can move forward. So challenging in the, how do you say, if left unconscious, right? If we weren't aware of the energy, if we were just acting on our impulses, if we were just reacting to things in life instead of having this intention, then yeah, it's a challenging transit, but extremely constructive as a result anyways, as this is where we learn our major lessons. But it's where these energies are very different that, again, things are really built. For example, Mars rules Aries, and Aries is squaring Cancer in the chart, which means there again, the square energy is that it's perhaps a challenge, but it's a challenge to build, a challenge to integrate. And in this case, it's the fire and water, the assertive yet nurturing and protective with this combination. And when we're dealing with very different energies like that, like I said, it's a very powerful process. It's like alchemy, it's like playing with very dangerous things, but things that have a tremendous potential and things that end up, being very powerful in very positive ways in life. But thank you, Srai. Holly, hey Athen, could you please explain about the life influence scoring on my true sidereal chart report and e-reading that I had done in December 2024? Okay, right. So you're talking about how each of the planets have that life influence, I believe. So and Gabrielle, if you could give the discount link to anyone who hasn't gotten their true sidereal report. If you haven't gotten your true sidereal report, everyone in the community gets 50% off. So that's at masteringthezodiac.com/report-discount, which you and any of your friends and family can use. But that's a very detailed, which usually 12 to 15 page report going into all of, the whole chart basically, and all in written format and PDF format. But what Holly is asking is that for each of the planets, it describes the life influence. And we say that it's either more of a conscious influence or an unconscious influence. And so what we mean there is that basically the more, conscious planets are the most visible in the sky. So for example, the sun and moon, the largest bodies in the sky, we would say are closer to that top of the iceberg. They're the more conscious part of ourselves. Even though the moon is a yin energy and it deals with our inner self, it's the inner self that we are most aware of, right? This represents the moon. So the sun and moon, both equally important, represents what you could call our ego or our conscious self. So these would be the most, the strongest conscious influence, meaning we're most conscious of them and they play the strongest role in our outer world in terms of how we interact with our outer world. So in the report, it's going to say sun and moon, conscious influence, very high influence. And that's why, in readings, we focus a lot on the sun and moon as being a very high influence, but here specifically conscious influence. Then as we work our way to the more and more distant planets, so then we go Mercury in between the Venus and Mars polarity, right? And then we go Jupiter and Saturn. And the more we go deeper, after Saturn, it's the non-visible, right? Because you can't see any planets beyond Saturn with the naked eye. You have to use a telescope. So as we move away from the sun and moon, we become more, we're talking about parts of ourselves in the chart that are more unconscious. It's not quite unconscious until you get after Saturn, because again, you can still see Saturn with the naked eye, which is symbolic that you can still see that part of the self and the ego. But definitely, once you get past Saturn, you're in the unconscious. And so as you'll see in the report, it'll start with the sun and moon being very, very high conscious influence. And then that goes lower and lower, less conscious influence, because we become less aware, and it becomes more difficult in that sense to integrate those more distant planets, especially, like I said, the trans-Saturnian planets that are very much our unconscious self. So in the report, it states that, so you're very clear in terms of what you might be more conscious about versus less conscious about, what's likely playing more of an influence in your everyday life versus more of an influence in your unconscious. Okay, but that's a great question, because this applies to not only the report, but the chart as a whole. So Erica says, overcast Sunday with winds, rain, and a tornado watches. I'm safe. Well, glad you're safe. Where I'm at here in Spain, I've also had very rainy weather lately. And I think Miami had some wind and rain recently. But anyways, that's Pisces, Pisces rules storms, it rules rain, it rules water, weather, that water energy, basically. I'm not saying that the whole world is going through that, but, it's one way to experience this Pisces energy, especially if it becomes very noticeable. Like for me, it's been very noticeable, the rain, simply because we don't get it as much, and we've been getting it a lot lately, and so maybe that's from the eclipse in Pisces, for example. Christine, great to see you. Grand sunny day, Athen. Bobby and everyone. Thank you so much, Christine. Ipa Phi, thank you so much. Greetings from Finland. Great to see you as always. Sprout Queen, great to see you. Sprout Queen says, Mercury's still having his way with electronics in my life. LOL. Yeah, there is always that electronic thing. I noticed today when I recorded the weekly, for whatever reason, my computer wouldn't have the didn't put my face, the video camera on the top right. Things like this seem to always happen during these retrogrades. But let's see. Tomorrow should get a bit of a station. Maybe things moving forward a little bit there. Aquarius Sky Clock, great to see you. Evening. Mystic Media, love from Northern California. Great to see you, Mystic. Twinkle from Zims, great to see you. Aloha, Athen and all. Accidental Alchemist, great to see you. Hello, Soul Family. Oh, so we got 2 questions about the house system. Welcome, Roggy. Hopefully that answered your question earlier. Great to see you, Chris. Thanks for joining. And a lot of new faces here, a lot of new names. Morongas, hello to all. Welcome, Morongas. A highway runner, not new? Okay. My apologies. But great to have you, and hope to see you again. April, howdy to all. Great to see you, April. John D, great to see you. The Seeker. Hayden, great to see you. All right, so we'll go ahead and start wrapping up here. Let me just see if there's any few more questions, one more question maybe, and then we will go ahead and start concluding here. So Sura, great for you to join us, asks, if I'm born with 3 retrogrades, will those planets be a main theme in my life? Not normally. Now, if a personal planet is retrograde, like basically if Mercury, Venus, or Mars are retrograde, then yes, because these are very personal planets and having them retrograde really plays a major theme in our life. It plays the retrograde theme, but it's very normal to have retrogrades. Basically, there's almost a 50-50 chance that anything that's not a personal planet, basically anything that's not Mercury, Venus, or Mars, there's a 50-50 chance that it's going to be retrograde. So each planet 50-50, most of us have a few at least retrogrades in our charts, mostly those outer planets that go retrograde for so long. Jupiter's retrograde for about 4 months, Saturn for about 5, and the rest for about 6. So what the retrograde will show is that energy is more internalized, and it can be good to, have that energy a little bit more conscious, as it tends to be a little more unconscious of that planet. But again, that's normal for trans-Mars planets anyways, planets after Mars. But it can make it a little more internalized, a little bit more apprehensive, energy that needs to be more conscious and perhaps intentionally implemented, because we tend to do it a little more automatically, and it actually tends to be stronger. Retrograde planets are actually planets that are very close to Earth at that time, and so it can really heighten the energy, but it usually heightens it sort of where we're doing it automatically and we're not very aware of it. So again, it's that conscious awareness that can really help. Thank you so much, Holly. Holly says, I really appreciate your True Sidereal weekly newsletter. You're very welcome, Holly. Thank you so much for saying that. Glad you're enjoying it. Bobby has Chiron in Pisces with Mars. Okay, so you either just had or about to have your Chiron return. So that's going to be definitely a new chapter with healing for you, whether it's happened or will happen soon. Mars will be activating it, or has recently. Okay, so Highway Runner, name is changed to Anne Marie. Oh, okay. Yeah, welcome, Anne Marie. Aiden, yeah, I just listen to this chill music. I think it's fitting. I think it's relaxing. I don't know. How do you guys like the music? Alrighty. I didn't see Gabriella's post there for the for that discount. So let me go ahead and do that for you all. Just a second. Make sure everyone does get that discount report. Okay, there we go. All right, everyone. Well, yeah, it's always great connecting. So we'll see if we have any other guests on. Do you guys like the guests? I think it mixes things up a little bit, so it's not just me and the camera. And, we get to have other perspectives. If anyone has any recommendations for people they'd like to see on the show, or if you'd like to be on the show, we can always, check you out and see, hey, talk a little bit and maybe share your perspective a little bit. So any suggestions there would be great. But yeah, great to see you all. And I'll see you, of course, next week. There will be a skipping for Easter. So we won't be doing the Easter one. I think that's in 2 weeks, right? Yeah, 2 weeks. So we'll be skipping that one, but I'll see you all next week. So have a great one, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.